Tell you why. I was part of that generation growing up where they didn't really teach grammar. I remember reading about this in the news. There was some kind of belief or new learning pedagogy that said you don't need to expressly teach grammar to students, and I was in that generation. So a lot of my grammar is on instinct. It just sounds right, but I can't tell you why. I couldn't tell you the rules, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but that's just my reality. So here we're being tested on our knowledge of abbreviations of Latin, i.e. being that is, and e.g. being for example. I don't know. When I studied law, this is another tangent. When I studied law, I had one lecturer, tutor, who would always say, and I really agree with him, he'd say, if you have to revert to Latin, it's because you don't understand what you're talking about. Because in the law, there's a lot of Latin. Hold that thought. Discover concerts. Oh, this is listening to live concerts on Spotify. Interesting. Not something I've ever done. Don't know if I would do it, but anyway. Anyway, on the tangent. So, yeah, my tutor would always say there's a lot of Latin in the law, and often you know, ipso facto or whatever. Nothing jumps out at me right now, but the lecturer would always say, if you're relying on those Latin phrases to try and explain what you're saying, it's because you don't really know what you're talking about. And I kind of now take that philosophy with all communication. And so I try not to use IE and EG. EG is pretty common, but even then, if I'm thinking of, again, someone who's using English as not their first language, I'll just say for example, or I'll say that is, and reduce the chance for confusion or miscommunication. I mean, I try and avoid abbreviations altogether because I find they're just not that helpful. But anyway, here you need to know IE, that is, EG, for example. So let's have a look. I gotta say, this artifact is very interesting. So it's clearly written by someone where English isn't their first language, but the vocabulary is, you know, next level vocabulary, like words you hardly ever hear. Tinabulated, I mean, what is that? And I don't know, that might be common, like, because I guess if you're learning English as a second language, your teacher may be more formulaic in how they teach you. So you probably get a better technical learning, but again, as this writer articulates, maybe not the kind of learning that helps you in a natural conversation. The kind of learning that if you grow up learning English as your first and even for me, my only language, things are more based on instinct and vibe, and I don't have the best technical knowledge of English, but I know it to be fluent and natural in it. So yeah, it's an interesting artifact. Just, again, that's a tangent. That doesn't help us answer the questions, but it is interesting. Just need some water, man. So much reading. He's not used to talking this much, which I'm going to have to get used to when I become a teacher. Actually, I do a bit of teaching already at university and also some high school programs. And one of the things I've always noticed is I lose my voice. I will preemptively take like butter menthols and other lozenges and just have them ready for when my voice starts to go. So I don't know if I'll have to do some like vocal coach training or something, like vocal strength training to try and strengthen my voice, because I've already noticed that I'm just not used to talking so much. My prior career in finance would often involve very long stretches of just sitting silently with a spreadsheet and by myself at the computer, and I took for granted the fact that I didn't need to use my voice as much as I'm going to have to. So anyway, another tangent there. This must be the last artifact. Is it a long one? It is. Okay. Hopefully my voice will hold out. This passage by John Dewey, a philosopher and educational reformer, was first published in 1900. John Dewey, when I took LANTITE before I started university, so I hadn't really learned anything yet. I had no idea who John Dewey was, but at Sydney Uni, at least in the Master of Teaching, John Dewey is a big deal. Like, a lot of our readings refer back to him. So in some ways, there could be some benefit to doing LANTITE after you've done a bit of your study, because some of this stuff will be more familiar, and maybe that helps in your ability to kind of correctly understand it. That said, I didn't really have any problem. I still got through the LANTITE even though I hadn't learned anything yet about teaching. But I find it interesting, and I think it's good that these artifacts are relevant to teaching, because in a way, this assessment of our literacy also becomes a little bit formative. Like, it's teaching us while it's also testing us. So I like that about this. So anyway, let's read John Dewey. We can also examine, actually, just minor tangent. I actually think Dewey, this was published in 1900, we're told. It's very interesting how in 2021, I think a very similar debate is happening about, I guess the way it's framed is often direct instruction or traditional learning versus constructivist learning or inquiry or problem-based learning. That's happening right now, that debate. I mean, it's 121 years and the same debate in education is still happening, which I think is very interesting. I mean, one interpretation is that simply no progress has been made in that debate, at least. Another interpretation is that maybe we're debating the wrong thing. Maybe the reason there can't be an answer is because it's not the right question, traditional versus constructivist. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know, but it is very interesting that this article, written in 1900, is highlighting debates that are fervently happening right now across different schools of thought on the best way that teaching and learning happens. So anyway, I'll carry on. Now again, minor tangent, this is very interesting. What I take from this is Dewey talking about, again, not everyone may agree, but I think this is an advocation of student-centered learning. And what I mean by that is there's a debate about whether in classrooms learning should be teacher-led or student-led. Do you have the learning mostly about what the teacher is saying and doing and the students following? Or do you let the students guide the teaching and the teacher is more of a facilitator? They kind of step down to the level of the students and guide and help. And again, I'm not going to say which is right or wrong, but one argument for student-centered learning is that students don't only learn in the classroom. They learn in many contexts, one of which, the context Dewey is describing, is at home. Students learn from their parents, and they learn from the things they do at home. They may learn from their wider family, their brothers and sisters if they have them. And so the idea that students know nothing and are an empty vessel to be filled with knowledge by the teacher, I don't think that makes sense given students are learning outside the classroom. So if they're learning things outside the classroom, why not let them bring it to the classroom so that other students can learn too? That's at least one way I think about student-centered teaching. But that's not to say all teaching, like I necessarily have fully concluded that student-centered teaching is better. I think it makes sense to me. But I still have a lot to learn on this stuff and need to hear all the elements of the debate. I also understand the need for teacher-centered instruction too, like particularly in math, which is where I'm going. It's hard to teach, or you couldn't just say to a class, hey everybody, go teach yourself Pythagoras. And that's probably a bit of a straw man example, because I don't even think a student-centered teacher would do that. But there are some things in math that you need to let the students know before they can then construct more knowledge, I think. So it's probably a balance of both, and it's about striking that balance. But anyway, I find it interesting that what Dewey has written here, I kind of think of that in terms of the student versus teacher-centered debate.